Welcome back, Carol. Nice to see you. I don't think you were here when I told people that my sister's name is, well, one of my sister's names is Carol, and it's spelled with a Y. It's really unusual. I love that spelling. So it's nice to see you, but it's nice to see your name too. It feels really familiar. So I've been thinking about stories. We on Tuesday, for those who were here and for those who weren't, we focused on, one might say, the stories of other beings. It's like, how do you what's a bat's story? But how could we ever understand a bat story? Because a bat's perception is so different than ours that to enter bat perception is human beings will never be able to do that. But we can be curious that each being has its own experience and its own, in its own way, story, although probably most animals, beings, don't do narratives the way that we do. I was sitting here in the chapel. I realized that one of my stories has been, can we afford this? And I sat here today and I thought, I have no idea, but it is so sweet to sit here in this chapel. I can't believe what a wonderful space it is with the light coming in the door and the bird song, and just to be here in person and with you on the screen. And I thought, I think I have to stop worrying about this. We'll just be here and we'll completely enjoy being together, and who knows what's going to happen next. So I'm going to see if we can do our one-day sits here too. Who knows if we can do that, but we'll see what happens next. It's really important to investigate our story. So I'll tell you another story. As I came in here this morning, everybody was setting up and all this stuff was happening, and then I went over into the office. There's a new office manager there who just started a couple of weeks ago. Her name is Joy. She's really sweet. And Sherry had suggested on Tuesday, because it was our first time, this is the first time we've been here on both Tuesday and Thursday, so it has a different feeling. I'm feeling a different, it's feeling more like, oh, home. And the minister was there. Sherry had suggested maybe they want to put something in the newsletter just to let people know we're here, because we're a little different. And coming out the door when you hear the Heart Sutra or a Japanese chant, if you've never heard that before, it's like, what in the world is that? And what are the I word? You know, it's like, well, that's so anyways, they were really sweet. The minister came out and said, oh yeah, we're so happy to have you here, and write something up. And it just, and then he said, I love having your people here, because whenever I see you walking in, it makes me be more mindful and present and more aware of just being alive. I thought, oh, we have a joyful responsibility here. Is that as we walk in and out of the chapel, and as we walk in and out of our lives, and no matter where we are, how we be with it and what our state of mind is really matters. I thought, oh, that's so sweet that he thinks that and feels that. And I said, yeah, that's what we're all trying to do too, is help each other be together and remember to wake up and be mindful and kind and aware. So, stories. I think I just want to say because I want to say, I just want to note that we're headed into a time that's been with around the January 6th, tonight is the first hearing, and everybody has stories, and we're so locked into what we think happened and what we think didn't happen, and so defended, and may we all just listen with, no matter what, may we listen with the heart of a bodhisattva. May we listen deeply so that we can all find our way together in this beautiful, crazy world. That's our job. So I have, I already told you some stories, but about 3 other stories that I'm going to share today. Okay, I guess I'll start with Blanche Hartman. Seeds for a Boundless Life. Little chapter in her book, which I recommend. It's really a delightful book. It's called Sharing Life. It is reported that the first words the Buddha spoke after his enlightenment were, "I now see that all beings, without exception, have the wisdom and compassion of the awakened ones." All beings, without exception, have the wisdom and compassion of the awakened ones. Only because of their delusions and self-clinging, they don't realize it. The possibility of awakening is in everyone, including you and including someone who has an irritating habit that you wish that person would stop, or the like. Everyone, by birthright, has the capacity for an essential nature for awakening. And we are all working towards bringing that into full flower, however we can, whatever impediments we've noted, working on letting them go so that we can fully flower as the benevolent beings that we are. There was always a saying that kind of floated around San Francisco Zen Center, because the minute you put a bunch of people together, of course, people are going to be their best person and they're going to be their worst person, and they're going to, and it's the rock tumbler of Sangha, and the of just like the people that are most difficult for you are your best teachers. Because they're going to take you places you wouldn't go by yourself. I can mostly wander around thinking I'm a basically kind human being until somebody bugs me. And then I get to study the self and study the self. And this includes the whole world. It's like, do you ever notice, like when you find a mosquito on your arm, what your response to it is and what the energy behind it is? It's like, pay attention. The whole world is teaching us. There is a quotation that is very encouraging to me from Pema Chodron, a teacher whom I admire. And it says, "The journey goes down, not up." She is saying that a spiritual awakening is not like climbing up a mountain on our own or leaving others behind. We are letting go of our attachments, even to climbing the mountain. My feeling, Blanche, is that we come to practice because we have realized in ourselves the fear and the suffering. The world won't let us stop realizing that if you're paying attention. It's a gift. Oh, fear. Oh, suffering. And we want to do something to alleviate it. We usually start with, I want to alleviate it in myself. But then the more and more you notice, you just realize it's everywhere, and you want to alleviate it for everyone. We want to be there not just for ourselves, but for everyone else who shares this human life, this precious human life. And we value this precious life so much, and yet it is impermanent. We aspire to love, peacefulness, joy, companionship, and friendship in the midst of impermanence. We learn to really appreciate this opportunity to be alive because it's so rare and it's so precious. We need to work on our own places, each of us, where we forget that life is a gift, and forget to be grateful, and forget that we're all in the same boat. We pay attention and notice what's going on in us and what may be separating us from the warmth and the love and the interconnection of all beings. We have some work to do because we have picked up some bad habits along the way. In the process of this work, we need to have some compassion for ourselves and our bad habits, and for others and their bad habits. And when we notice them, if we see we can relinquish them, we'll be a lot happier. And so will the people that share our lives with us. Amen. I keep wanting to tell this, it keeps leaking in, so maybe I'll tell this story. Is that there's a Buddhist teacher who I respect a lot. And he sent me a talk. I think maybe he feels a little guilty about it, but he also felt like he really had to say it. But I think he also, I don't know, somehow he needs some kind of bearing witness. And he talked about Buffalo and Uvalde. And about how he's working so hard to be so clear about compassion for everybody in this. And that there is a platform that a certain political party in our country is sticking to that is not based in wisdom and compassion. And he wants to say that. So it's like, so he'll say, I have to say that the fact that the platform of this party won't move and won't be moved by these circumstances, there's something wrong here. And I love people in this party. I'm not putting anybody outside of it, but I also want to say there's something really wrong here. So how do we do this? I sent it back to, I wrote back to him and just said, his pain, he can hardly talk, he's in so much grief and pain, trying to just find some expression of how to do this as a true human being. I mostly just wrote him back and said, I just love you because you're in so much grief and pain and trying so hard to find your way, as we all are, in the midst of what we know are our bad habits of cutting things up and cutting things out, but of also going around and not speaking truths that maybe need to be said. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you that story because he was in my heart as I was talking. So now I'm going to tell you another story. You probably all have some, and you'll have time at the end to maybe share some of yours. This is a beautiful book that Anne recommended once again, and I had known it because we read it in the racial justice group. I recommend it to everybody. Robin Wall Kilmer's Braiding Sweetgrass. If you don't know it, wonderful summer read. I mean, any reading, but wonderful summer reading. And I thought, I think I had read this some time ago, but I don't know about you, but to me, I keep needing to hear the same things over and over. just like compassion. You can just tell yourself that one forever. Love. Pay attention to fear. So here's the beginning of the world through an ancient myth of, I think she says this is from the Great Lakes. This is so every tradition has a story about the beginning of the world. This one's, in the beginning there was the sky world. She felt like a maple seed, pirouetting on an autumn breeze. A column of light streamed from a hole in the sky world, making her path where only darkness had been before. It took her a long time to fall. In fear, or maybe hope, she clutched a tiny bundle tightly in her hand. Hurtling downward, she saw only dark water below. But in that emptiness, there were many eyes gazing up at the sudden shaft of light. They saw there was a small object, a mere dust mote in the beam. Do you get the feeling with this story that it's like my visual and visceral imagination starts to open? The story really calls me into it. As it grew closer, they could see that it was a woman with arms outstretched, long black hair billowing behind as she spiraled toward them. The geese nodded at one another and arose together from the water in a wave of goose music. She felt the beat of their wings as they flew beneath to break her fall. And from the only home she'd ever known, she caught her breath at the warm embrace of soft feathers as they gently carried her downward. And so it began. The geese could not hold the woman above the water for much longer, so they called a council to decide what to do. Resting on their wings, she saw them all gather. Loons, otters, swans, beavers, fish of all kinds. A great turtle floated in their midst and offered his back for her to rest upon. Gratefully, she stepped from the goose wings onto the dome of his shell. And the others understood that she needed land for her home and discussed how they might serve her need. The deep divers among them had heard of mud at the bottom of the water and agreed to go find some. Loon dove first, but the distance was too far, and after a long while he surfaced with nothing to show for his efforts. One by one, the other animals offered to help. Otter, beaver, sturgeon, but the depth and the darkness and the pressures were too great for even the strongest of the swimmers. They returned gasping for air with their heads ringing. Some did not return at all. Soon only little Muskrat was left, the weakest diver of all. He volunteered to go while the others looked on doubtfully. His small legs flailed as he worked his way downward, and he was gone for a very long time. They waited and waited for him to return, fearing the worst for their relative. It's all relatives. And before long, a stream of bubbles rose with the small, limp body of the muskrat. He had given his life to aid this helpless human. But then the others noticed that his paw was tightly clenched, and when they opened it, there was a small handful of mud. Turtle said, "Here, put it on my back, and I will hold it." Sky Woman bent and spread the mud with her hands across the shell of the turtle. Moved by the extraordinary gifts of the animals, she sang in thanksgiving and then began to dance, her feet caressing the earth. The land grew and grew as she danced her thanks, from the dab of mud on Turtle's back until the whole earth was made. Not by Sky Woman alone, but from the alchemy of all the animals' gifts coupled with her deep gratitude. Together, they formed what we know today as Turtle Island, our home. Like any good guest, Sky Woman had not come empty-handed. The bundle was still clutched in her hand. When she toppled from the hole in the sky world, she had reached out to grab onto the tree of life that grew there. In her grasp were branches, fruits and seeds of all kinds of plants. These she scattered onto the new ground and carefully tended each one until the world turned from brown to green and sunlight streamed through the hole from the sky world, allowing the seeds to flourish. Wild grasses, flowers, trees, and medicines spread everywhere. And now that the animals too had plenty to rest, plenty to eat, many came to live with her on Turtle Island. Robin Wall Kilmer says, the story of Sky Woman's journey is so rich and glittering, it feels to me like a deep bowl of celestial blue from which I could drink again and again. It holds our beliefs, our history, our relationships. Looking into that starry bowl, I see images swirling so fluidly that the past and the present become as one. Images of Sky Woman speak not just to where we came from, but also of how we can go forward. The Sky Woman story, shared by the original peoples throughout the Great Lakes, is a constant star in the constellation of teachings we call the original instructions. Did you know there was an original instruction manual? These are not instructions like commandments, though, or rules. Rather, they are like a compass, and they provide an orientation but not a map. The work of living is creating that map for yourself. The work of living is creating that map for yourself. How to follow the original instructions will be different for each of us and different for every era. In their time, Sky Woman's first people lived by their understanding of the original instructions, with ethical prescriptions for respecting hunting, family life, ceremonies that made sense in their world. But ethical. What are the original ethical prescriptions? Perhaps this story endures because we too are always falling. Our lives, both personal and collective, share her trajectory. Whether we jump or are pushed, or the edge of the unknown world just crumbles at our feet, we fall, spinning into someplace new and unexpected. And despite our fears of falling, the gifts of the world stand by to help us. So I was thinking, each one of us is probably in some way known and unknown, and maybe it changes over time, is we hold something in our hand when we're falling. Somehow there's something that we're bringing with us, something that gives us courage or strength or the next step or the ground to help us in these times that are uncertain on the planet, in our country. And then what came to me is the last story that I want to offer, because I do hold it in my little hand, in my little part, and in my little vows, and in each one of you as I'm falling, whether I'm falling towards or away from, or it's the Metta Sutta. It's the Metta Sutta of loving kindness. So, people here in the room, you have your chant book, and it's on page 6. If those of you at home have it, or can pull it up, or you can just hum along. Let's chant it. Maybe as you chant it, let yourself fall into it. Let it catch you with an awareness of whatever it is that may be that you're clutching onto in an old way, to try to find some way to make sense of this world? And what is it that you are opening your heart and your hand to, so that you can more and more be caught in this bigger, deeper story of Earth Dharma, Heart Dharma, Bodhisattva Life Dharma. So page 6 in the chant book, and I'll just chant it, and you can all chant along here, and please at home chant too. We'll send it up to the airplanes, and we'll send it to the office, and the minister who thinks we're an inspiration, so we can be that. And if you're at home, you can send it down into the earth and down into all the little beings that are sacrificing themselves in this moment for us to be here, and all those that are flying and becoming. And here we go. Metta Sutta, loving kindness meditation. This is what should be accomplished by the one who is wise, who seeks the good and has obtained peace. Let one be strenuous, upright, and sincere, without pride, easily contented and joyous. Let one not be submerged by the things of the world. Let one not take upon oneself the burden of riches. Let one's senses be controlled. Let one be wise but not puffed up. And let one not desire great possessions even for one's family. Let one do nothing that is mean or that the wise would reprove. May all beings be happy. May they be joyous and live in safety. All living beings, whether weak or strong, in high or middle or low realms of existence, small or great, visible or invisible, near or far, born or to be born, may all beings be happy. Let no one deceive another, nor despise any being in any state. Let none by anger or hatred wish harm to another. Even as a mother at the risk of her life watches over and protects her only child, so with a boundless mind should one cherish all living things, suffusing love over the entire world, above, below, and all around without limit. So let one cultivate an infinite goodwill toward the whole world, standing or walking, sitting or lying down, during all one's waking hours. Let one practice the way with gratitude, not holding to fixed views, endowed with insight, freed from sense appetites. One who achieves the way will be freed from the duality of birth and death. So, groups of 3 or 4. Of course, anything that is most urgent